Hey guys, TrepChains here with a zMonk build guide. I know a few of you have been waiting for this. So my focus today is on some of the changes that have happened in Diablo 3 patch 2.6.6, particularly around the Captain Crimson's variations available now. I'm going to be talking through my preferred build for the zMonk this patch, but also talking about some of the other variations that you may be asked to run when you are running with other people and the reasoning behind these variations. Overall, the role is very similar to the zMonks previously. You're using Sank to protect things, you're doing a lot of healing, you need the cooldown for that. All those things are the same. There are some differences in skills in some of these builds based on preferences, but it's important to remember the variations I go through today, that they are all viable. And I want to be very clear that while some of the preferred variations these days don't use Cyclone Strike, my preferred variation does, and keep in mind I have cleared 150s on my zMonk with Cyclone Strike, but I will be running through the variations that don't use Cyclone Strike and what you need to change in your build to remove that and still run the builds that people expect you to. I did want to briefly mention the boss fights here, as I've been asked about this a few times. Basically, it depends a little bit what kind of Rift Guardian killer you're working with. So in this case, I'm working with a Corpse Lance Necromancer, and whether it's straight Corpse Lance or a hybrid Corpse Lance Skeletons build, this is valid. You are dropping your normal primary and working with Deadly Reach Piercing Trident for that 100% knockback, which is going to be proccing your strong arms for more damage. You can be occasionally hitting your other skill, be it something like a Cyclone Strike or a Breath of Heaven or otherwise. Your main skills, you're trying to keep your Sank generally around where the Necromancer is, you're keeping your Epiphany up, and you're spamming your mantra like you would with those three throughout the Rift. You should generally not have anything that is going to CC the boss here, so you shouldn't have to worry too much about the timing of their Corpse Lance. For the most part, you won't be using your Crippling Wave Tsunami on the boss. However, once your Necromancer has started their Corpse Lance, it doesn't hurt to throw one hit in there, but mainly you really want to be using your Deadly Reach Piercing Trident. Now, running with a Thorns Necromancer Rift Guardian killer is a little bit different, so it's really important that you're aware of what kind of Rift Guardian killer you are working with. So the Thorns Necromancer really wants their command skeletons to be taking the hits from the boss. This will typically mean that you need to position yourself behind those skeletons, preferably around where the Necromancer is, keeping the Sank on the Necromancer, but making sure the boss is primarily hitting the skeletons. So you're still doing your normal stuff, primarily using Deadly Reach Piercing Trident on the boss, keeping your Sanctuary up, keeping your Epiphany up, hitting your mantra pretty regularly, hitting your other skill, be it a Cyclone Strike, Breath of Heaven, or something else occasionally, but the positioning is what's really changed so that the Necromancer can do its damage by having its command skeletons take most of the damage from the boss. Okay, so that summarizes most of the key things. During the Rift, you're looking after the Wizard, Sanctuary, Epiphany, spamming your mantra, hitting with your Crippling Wave Tsunami primarily, using your other skill, be it a Cyclone Strike, Breath of Heaven, something else. Throughout, forget about Deadly Reach until you get to the boss, and then when you get to the boss, as we've just described. So I'm going to flick into game now for a bit of a gear and build look at a few of these variations. Okay, so I'm in game now with my zMonk for patch 2.6.6. This is my preferred build, so I'm starting with my preferred build, and then I'm going to run through a few variations thereof. So having a look here at my gear and skills. Importantly, the key change is Captain Crimson's. So we've incorporated a 2-piece Captain Crimson's through the belt and the pants because of those 2 and 3 set changes. So I get an extra cooldown by having reduced cooldown of all skills by 20%, and I also get a reduced resource cost by 20% on there. And the second of the 3 set, damage taken is reduced by your percentage of resource cost reduction. So overall, and this can go a lot higher than I've probably got it right now, my spirit cost reduction is 45%. So I've got that extra protection. So I'm running a Inners 4-piece. Well, I'm running 3-piece, but I've got Ring of Royal Grandeur in my cube here to get my base 4 effects of my mantras, which is really important to support our team. So there, I guess the sets I'm running. I also am still running Istvan's set. Okay. I think that's important. So I'm going to run through some of the stats and stuff I'm using on the gear. There is some slight changes to what I would have run differently based on where possible. I'm also grabbing the resource cost reduction because that helps me survive thanks to the Captain Crimson's bonus. So I am running Inner's Helm, and this is an important change because it actually means that we've lost Leoric's Helm, which is cooldown, right? So while we've gained some cooldown through Captain Crimson's, we've lost the cooldown of the helm. So keep that in mind. It's not as much of a cooldown bonus as you would generally think. Okay, so on my helm here, we really want survival stats. So I've got Dex, Fit, and Armor, but I'd probably prefer Dex, Fit, percent life, or even better, Vit, percent life, all res. But I've got a secondary res on this, so I can't get all res. But basically, survivability stats is what I want there on my helm. On my chest armor, this is one of the pieces that you can get health globe bonus on, and wherever you can get health globe bonus, it's pretty important that you have it because that's buffing all of your heals. So importantly, secondary health globe bonus there, and then other survivability stats. So here I've got Dex, Fit, percent life with a secondary resist, which is quite good. And then my last Inner's piece here is my gloves. So cooldown is still essential for this build and any version of this build. Attack speed also helps boost your heals because you're hitting things more and therefore you're healing more with your epiphany. So stats you would want on your gloves. Cooldown, great. Attack speed, very handy still for the build. If possible, some resource cost reduction would be great because remember that's helping you survive, or other survivability stats. It's always going to roll with Dex, so I have Dex on here and some life per hit. Life per hit's not ideal, as I say. I'd prefer something else, be it some Vit, be it some resource cost reduction. Okay. So moving to my Captain Crimson's. Survivability stats are pretty important here. So they've got Vit, they've got percent life, they've got some armor, they've got some regen life, and some secondary phys res. Obviously, I'd prefer some resist all as a primary there instead of, say, that armor or something. But overall, it's not too bad. Pants now, again, survivability is important here. I think it is important to have the sockets there, personally. So a couple of sockets are great, some vitality, some dex, and some other survivability stats. So all res would be great. I've got a secondary res here, so there's some armor on that. Moving to some supporting legendaries. So if you're running the Cyclone Strike version of the build, and this is, as I say, my preferred version, this will change for other versions, so we'll talk through that later. Only if you're running Cyclone Strike will you run Lefbra's Soliloquy. So in this case, that's what I'm running. So I want cooldown on there, I want health globes, I want that orange stat to be as high as I can. I've got it midway there at 45 right now. And then other survivability stats. So Dex is fine. Ideally, I'd want some vitality or resist or something on those as well. But right now, I've got some armor and regen life. Spirit guards. Importantly, you want to be running spirit guards plus strong arm braces. So you can have either one being worn and the other in your cube. Doesn't matter which way you put them. Just basically put whatever you've got that looks okay on. Throw the other in the cube. So these spirit guards are okay, particularly because they have the 60% there. So they've got the max on your orange stat. Dex, Fear are great. Regen Life is helpful here, but ideally I'd want something like an All Resist or something on those instead of that crit hit chance, which isn't doing me any favors. If you are wearing strong arms, again, you want the orange stat as high as possible, as close to 30%. Boots, illusory boots, another piece where you can get health globes, so try and make sure you get a pair with health globes on there as a secondary, and then as a primary, it's really about survivability. So the Dex and Fit are fine, Resistal is helpful as well, and then your other stats, something like a Regen Life, I personally prefer, but as you can see, I haven't got something that great yet this season, so I'm running some movement speed on there, and that's just affected how I've applied my Paragon points. Okay, jewelry. So for your amulet, you've got a little bit of choice with jewelry. I am running a Flavor of Time. I think it's nice to have that double pylon effects. Importantly, with your amulet, you want to make sure you have cooldown in the primary stats and a secondary of your health globe bonus. So that's also another reason that Flavor of Time isn't such a bad choice. It will automatically roll with cooldown, which makes having the health globe bonus not too hard to get. You just need it to roll with a socket. It does, however, mean I've got some useless stats on there at the moment with poison skill damage that I don't need and movement speed there. Other options for your amulet, depending on how you want to run, and these are all viable options, is a Hellfire that has a useful passive that also has some cooldown and some health globe bonus, or something like an immunity amulet with some cooldown and some health globe bonus. So kind of up to you what you run there. I'm personally running the Flavor of Time at the moment. Rings, for this Cyclone Strike version of the build, they're pretty standard. So running the Oculus Ring, importantly, cooldown, health globe bonus. It would be fantastic to have some attack speed or some resource cost reduction on there as well, but I haven't got that far yet. Importantly, with your Oculus Ring, you do want that orange stat to be as high as possible. It ranges from 70 to 85%. You can see here mine is an 85%. That's also one of the reasons I particularly like this particular ring. Okay, other ring I'm running here is Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. Now, importantly, this is the only version of the zMonk when we still got Cyclone Strike or some other spender where this is valuable. This is one of the pieces that will change in some of the other versions I show you. On Obsidian Ring, priorities is cooldown. You can see how I'm very low on my cooldown, unfortunately, but I needed the health globes. So cooldown would be a higher priority, followed by attack speed and resource cost, and then, you know, importantly, the health globes on the secondary there. So they're the kind of stats you want on your Obsidian if you are running a zMonk that actually has a spender. If you are not, we'll be removing this ring. Okay, and weapons. So on this version of the build, I am still running Istvans. So Little Rogue and Slanderer. The preferred stats on this are a little different now. So previously I would have always said vitality, cooldown, and attack speed would be ideal. And I mean, they're still good, but really now I would like cooldown, resource cost, and attack speed. So resource cost has been boosted because A, it reduces my resource cost, but B, it contributes to my Captain Crimson's bonus. So in this case here, I've got vitality, cooldown, and resource cost, so I don't have attack speed on this one. One thing that's important to remember with your weapons is they are a stat that can roll a hard CC as secondary. So this is something like a freeze on hit or a stun on hit. So you want to avoid hard CC as secondary. So I don't have that on this one. Okay, and my Slanderer, I do have better primaries on this. So you can see there, I've got my cooldown, I've got my resource cost and attack speed on there. Important to note on this one, while it's got what I want, it does have a soft CC on the secondary with the chill on hit. Now, at the end of the day, it's not too bad. It's a chill, it's a soft CC. It's not going to affect the Necromancer. So keep that in mind. But any hard CC on there would be quite a bad thing to have, apart from maybe a knockback. But even a knockback in this, depending on what your barb's running, might annoy the barb. So just keep that in mind. Okay, I think that's my weapon. Let's have a quick look at my cube. So in my cube, I am still running Flying Dragon, double attack speed, doubles my healing for that time. So why not? Because it works with Epiphany. Strong Arms already explained. You can run Strong Arms here, or you can run your Spirit Guards there, depending where one use the other. And Ring of Royal Grandeur. Typically with this version of the zMonk, I will recommend the Ring of Royal Grandeur is in your cube. And one of the key things for that is it's actually really hard to get a Ring of Royal Grandeur rolled ideally. Because really you want cooldown, you want a socket, and you want a secondary globe bonus. Rogues roll with default dex, life per hit, and attack speed. They only have one primary stat that's random. So to get that combination, you need it to roll with health globes as it comes naturally, and then roll as well at least one of cooldown or a socket. You got to get that combo. And I've done a lot of Act 1 bounties and haven't found one that actually suits that as yet. So typically for this version, recommend Ring of Royal Grandeur in the cube. Okay, so quickly, legendary gems. Again, this version, I recommend Esoteric Alteration. Its survivability, it does really help you, particularly when you've got a lot of elites around. Ice Blink. This is giving enemies you chill a 10% increased chance to be critically hit, and through the most of the rift, where you're running something like Crippling Wave Tsunami, that will be being applied as you use that. Okay. Gem of Toxin. Everything you're hitting is getting poisoned. Everything you poison takes increased damage from all sources, and deals less damage. So you're helping everyone, help them do more damage and help everyone take less damage. So very important there. Toxin. My standard gems I'm running here: cooldown in the helm, critical, resist all in the armor pieces, and because I'm support, I don't need to do damage. Life per hit in the weapons. Okay. Pretty much what I'm wearing. Have a look at my Paragon. I'm running a support build. I don't need area damage. All area damage will do if I use it is make more calculations and potentially lag the game. So if you are running support, take your area damage out. Do everybody a favor. Resource cost reduction, full points in. Life per hit, all points in. Gold find doesn't really help me much in GDRs, but all points in. In terms of priority of this, if you were earlier on, resource cost reduction now comes first, then life per hit, then gold find. In defense, obviously I have all points in everything here. If I was doing it early on, I would probably say resist all first, life second, life regen third, and armor last here. In offense, I do have all points in. Cooldown would be my first priority, then attack speed, and then crit hit chance, crit hit damage. You don't need either, whatever order you like. Over in core here, I have all points in maximum spirit. Maximum spirit's important. It helps me heal and stuff. So I only have 6 points in movement speed, and that is because I have a couple of gear pieces that have 11% on them. So I've got 22% from my gear. It only goes to a maximum of 25%, so I only have 3% worth in Paragon to hit that limit, and then all the rest of my points there into Vitality for survivability. Okay, look at my skill screen for this version of the build. This is what I'm running, and it's very similar, pretty much the same as what I ran last season when I get to this point. So Crippling Wave Tsunami, chilling everything, has a pretty good attack speed and stuff as well. Cyclone Strike, Implosion on my preferred version of the build, pulling stuff in and costing spirit, importantly, working with my Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac to reduce my cooldowns. Inner Sanct, Temple of Protection, the barb's not always around. Having Temple of Protection helps make sure that your DPS aren't CC'd. Epiphany, Soothing Mist. This is my healing, so every time I'm hitting, Epiphany is soothing, and importantly, it's increased by my health globe bonus, which is one of the reasons you want so much health globe bonus there on your secondaries on your gear. Mantra of Healing, Time of Need. So the passive of this is obviously healing, which is increased by your life per second, which is why it is valuable to have some on some items. And Time of Need really helps your allies that are below 50% life by helping them to take 30% less damage. And importantly, the active of this is a absorbing shield, which is increased by your health globe bonus as well. One of the things you need to be doing is spamming this, because even if the shield is still active on you, it might not be active on your DPS. So the more you spam this shield, which is the active, by pressing it, the better survivability everybody has. Deadly Reach Piercing Trident, this is your generator to use on the boss. You don't need to use this throughout the rift. If you do, you might annoy some people because it's going to knock everything back. So save this for the boss, and you're using it on the boss because A, you can't knock the boss back anyway, but it does apply your strong arm braces then on the boss. Okay, the passives I'm using, kind of resonance. This is basically so that I can spam my mantra. Beacon Avatar, cooldown, awesome. Resolve, this means that everyone around me that I'm hitting is doing less damage. That's helpful. And hey, I like a cheat death personally, so I'm using a cheat death on that. So that is my preferred build for patch 2.6.6. But I want to have a bit of a chat about some of the other variations of it. So, particularly, let me go to the armory. I'm just going to quickly show twos. This won't take very long. So for twos, I have a couple changes in there because twos, well, there's no other support. It's me and basically a wizard. So just very quickly on twos, we get rid of the extra generator, which we would be using on the boss, and we throw in Blinding Flash, Crippling Light. So that's for some more survivability, and we're allowed to CC because there's no necromancer running around, basically. So just quickly mentioning that there. The other key change for 2-player that I would recommend is running the Executioner in the cube. While Flying Dragon is still technically helpful, the Executioner in patch 2.6.6 now slays enemies with less than 10% health. So if you don't have a Necromancer around running a curse, this is a huge damage buff for the party. Everything else is very, very similar. Okay. Now going to some of the builds that I think people want me to talk about. Breath of Heaven. I'm going to equip this here. This is a very basic Breath of Heaven build, where basically all I've done is ditch Cyclone Strike and throw in Breath of Heaven. So let's quickly have a look at what Breath of Heaven does firstly. The Breath of Heaven Zephyr here is a heal. So the base is a heal and it's increased by our health globe bonus. So it's a pretty strong heal. Importantly also, by running Zephyr, allies healed have increased movement speed by 30% for 3 seconds. 3 seconds is a pretty short time, so if you want this bonus to have its maximum, you've got to be hitting it, every 3 seconds near your actual DPS. Okay, so that's the key change here, is that we've got this Breath of Heaven. However, one of the things this does, if we take out a Cyclone Strike or something else and put in Breath of Heaven, we actually lose any ability to use Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. So we already lost our Leoric's Crown when we put in our Captain Crimson's. And now we've lost anything that procs an Obsidian Ring. Breath of Heaven does not proc Obsidian Ring, right? Because it's not an attack, it doesn't have a cost, it's just a cooldown skill. So we've actually lost a lot of cooldowns. So if I just stand here with what I've just done, which is just throw in Breath of Heaven and remove my Lephra's Soliloquy because they don't do me any good because I no longer have Cyclone Strike, and I press my Epiphany and I just sit here doing whatever I want to do, let's say I'm just healing away, you will see that despite having a fair bit of cooldown, my Epiphany will run out before I can hit it again. Okay, and this is running with 72.75% cooldown, which is a pretty large amount of cooldown, but it's not enough. It's not enough for Epiphany. Now, as a zMonk, you are most survivable and you're doing your most healing when you're in Epiphany, so that becomes a problem. I actually do not have enough cooldown without my Obsidian Ring around Breath of Heaven. So anyways, to improve that, to improve the cooldown to run this, even though my cooldown looks great at 72.75%, it's not enough. So one of the things I have to do, and keep in mind this is going to not be great for my survivability, is I need to run Gogok. And I know a lot of people say you should always run Gogok as a zMonk, but I've never really found that, right? I've always found that I'm able to build enough cooldown and attack speed into my build that Gogok was not really necessary. So keep in mind, to run Breath of Heaven successfully, you are going to be dropping Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac, which was great cooldown for you, which means you need to offset that by picking up something like Gogok, right? So you're losing your Esoteric Alteration, which I personally really like to run, and picking up Gogok. So that means that while you're in those groups attacking in each pool, you'll be able to have enough cooldown. There's still maybe an issue though when you're running between groups to keep that Gogok stack up. So just you need to be aware of that and manage that, because you don't want your Epiphany to run out and then for you to die running between groups. So just be aware of that. That's one of the key things to be aware of here. So you can throw in your Epiphany of Heaven, but you're going to lose Obsidian Ring and you're going to gain Gogok, or I recommend gaining Gogok and losing Esoteric, because actually remaining in Epiphany is going to be better for your overall survivability. So the other changes I've made to support that. So I've actually put the Ring of Royal Grandeur on. Got to keep in mind though, what I previously said, to make Ring of Royal Grandeur work to the best benefit, you need it to roll the secondary and then roll one of cooldown or the socket. In my case, I haven't found one that works like that yet. So I've put it on anyway, but I do not have any health globes on this because I just haven't got one that can roll like that yet. But I do have my 8% cooldown because I was trying to get my max cooldown. So overall here I only have 170,000 globes right now on this version of the build. And that's partly because I lost a bunch on a ring here. Because I haven't been able to get Ring of Royal Grandeur. As a bonus though, it has given me another jewelry slot, because I've moved my Ring of Royal Grandeur from the cube onto my character, which has then freed up. Oh, I haven't set that up right. Let me quickly change that. Has set up a jewelry slot here where I can put a Star of Azkaranth or some other immunity amulet if I would prefer. But in this case, we're going with a Star of Azkaranth because I think fire is one of the biggest damage issues in the game. So Star of Azkaranth it is. Okay. So we freed up a jewelry slot, and so we get an immunity amulet in addition to either our Flavor of Time that we were wearing, or another immunity amulet if we were wearing it, or a Hellfire amulet if we were wearing it. So that's the bonus we get there. Okay, so other changes include, I briefly mentioned this, but the shoulders. So I've had to lose the Cyclone Strike shoulders. Importantly, I still want at least cooldown and health globe bonus. If I still want some survivability from it, I do recommend the Pauldrons of the Skeleton King, because the orange stat on there, when receiving fatal damage, there is a chance that you are instead restored to 25% of maximum life and cause nearby enemies to flee in fear. Well, the fleeing in fear isn't great, but it's an extra cheat death there. So that can be handy as well. Okay. The one other change that I've really made here, I'll just note my Paragon is still exactly the same. The one other key change I've made is to my skill screen. Obviously we've put in Breath of Heaven Zephyr, but I've also changed a passive. So once I've removed something like Cyclone Strike or another spender, my only spender is now my mantra. Unfortunately, it does not proc Obsidian Ring, keep that in mind. But that's my only spender I've got left. So maybe, and it might be something you play around with, perhaps we don't need Chant of Resonance. And if I don't need Chant of Resonance, I would recommend an attack speed passive like Seize the Initiative or Alacrity. So I've put Seize on this one. So that's the other key change there. So that's, I guess, the base of what I would do if I wanted to run Breath of Heaven instead. Say, not my preferred build, but lots of people will be telling you to do it. So this is one of the recommended setups. So that's one variation of Breath of Heaven you can use. I do have another variation. I did just want to talk about something I probably forgot here, which is why are people even asking you to run Breath of Heaven anyway? That's because, not so much because of the heal, to be honest, because from the base builds you can do plenty of healing, but people are generally saying, hey, we want our Barb to be running Ground Stomp and to be doing most of the pulling, and that means we don't want anybody else to be CCing. So they're trying to cut any of your CC, and Cyclone Strike is a CC. During the Rift, it is a knockback, and that causes 40% CC resistance. So they want to cut that out. And there's been other ways to achieve that, and I spoke about a way last season by using Exploding Palm. So it's to work with the Barbs who definitely want no other CC, or the groups who definitely want no other CC. I'm still unconvinced that Ground Stomp is a better pull than Cyclone Strike myself, but that's personal opinion. Anything does work. So they don't want the CC. And why Breath of Heaven Zephyr, particularly? Why not just something like Exploding Palm? Well, it's really about that movement speed bonus. Okay, so before Barbs were running Ground Stomp, a lot of them were running something like Sprint, which helped the group move between things. But they have to take that out to be able to run Ground Stomp. So now this has a movement speed bonus on it. So that's why they want you to run it. They want you to not be CCing, and they like the movement speed bonus because it helps you run faster through the Rift. So there you go. So here's another variation. So one of the problems I said with this Breath of Heaven build was around cooldown, right? The first version, when I pressed my little cooldown here, I would lose Epiphany before the cooldown timer ran out. Now this version I've got won't do it. It'll lose my cooldown about at exactly the same time. Can hit it again, right? If anything, it's a very small fraction of a second, but I've got to be right on that to make sure I hit it as soon as it's up. So this version technically, although I may not recommend it, you could still run, like you've got enough Epiphany there. So you may not have to use Gogok, but you could use Gogok. So Gogok or Esoteric, interchangeable, pick what you like. So what this version has done is it's added more cooldown. How has it done that? It's done that through Borns. Borns 2-piece set. Keeping in mind we've got Ring of Royal Grandeur. So I get the 3-piece set of the reduced cooldown by 10% there. So that takes out a shoulder slot. Importantly on shoulders, make sure you've at least got your cooldown and your health globe bonus, and a weapon slot. So you can see here on the weapon, again, I don't want any hard CC on the secondaries. Cooldown, resource cost reduction are great. Some attack speed would be great as well, but otherwise that vitality there is fine. In losing a weapon slot, I've also lost my little rogue slanderer and a lot of attack speed. So I picked up my cooldown for Epiphany to keep that up. Overall, I've got a little less attack speed now on this build due to losing my little rogue and slanderer. So this is another version you can run which has that extra cooldown. So to get to the cooldown required to keep this Epiphany up, I'm at 75.24%. Keep that in mind, 75.24%. You do get a little extra survivability here as well because you can add in a Storm Shield. Importantly, Storm Shield can have health globe bonus, so you can actually pick up some more health globe bonus here and make sure it's got cooldown, and another stat on there would be handy. So I have a little more health globe bonus on this compared to my other Breath of Heaven build because I can throw it into the Storm Shield. I've still got the issue with my Ring of Royal Grandeur that it's very, very hard to get one that you can end up with cooldown, socket, and the health globe bonus, because you have to have the health globe bonus roll naturally and then one of the cooldown or the socket to make that work. So that's the other version of the build. Keep in mind this Esoteric, interchangeable with the Gogok, but you can actually keep Epiphany up full time with this version while running Breath of Heaven despite losing your Obsidian Ring. I just have a quick look at the cube here. So again, no real change here. I'm still sticking with Flying Dragon as I'm losing attack speed elsewhere. I feel it's important. I've still got Strong Arms, remembering that Strong Arms and Spirit Guards are pretty much interchangeable in those two slots. And an Immunity Amulet here. Keep in mind, I'm wearing the Flavor of Time. You can wear a Flavor of Time. You can wear an appropriate Hellfire or a Star of Azkranth. Looking at my skill screen here, Breath of Heaven Zephyr is obviously in. Depending on how much resource you're using, this Chant of Resonance can be switched out with an attack speed passive like a Seize the Initiative without much issue, but most everything else has stayed the same, right? I'm still using Crippling Wave Tsunami, Inner Sanct Temple of Protection, Epiphany Soothing Mist, Mantra of Healing, Time of Need, and Deadly Reach Piercing Trident. And my stable passives, Beacon of Atar, Resolve, and Near Death Experience. Okay, so I think that kind of finishes off my build guide here. I think that's most of what you need to know. Any questions, please drop them in the comments and I will try and get back to you. Have fun with your zMonks. Importantly, work with your teams, right? People have preferences. As a zMonk, you're just going to have to work with them. Keep in mind, as you're using Captain Crimson's, that resource cost reduction has an increased importance, helping you survive. So, helps you out. Run it as you need. Thank you very much for watching, and GG!